All right. Welcome, everybody, all our dear friends who know their way to Chess.com events. We are back with round 2 of the U.S. Chess Championships and U.S. Women's Chess Championships for 2021. I am your host, International Master David Pruess, along with co-host Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Ben, how are you feeling for today?
I feel great, and I'm pretty happy about the round yesterday. 6 decisive games, and the draws were all, of course, very interesting as well. So it was a pretty exciting day yesterday, and I don't think we're going to see anything less today.
Right. If we go along at a clip of 6 decisive games for every 12 games for every round, that would be pretty good throughout the event. And I think it's more likely to be about 2 on the Open Championship side and about 4 on the Women's Championship side.
That's what we had yesterday. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at the format of the event. Always a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a 12-player round robin. That's for each event, and it's 11 rounds. Time control's 90 minutes with a 30-second increment every move. And at move 40, once both players have played 40 moves, they get 30 minutes extra. No draw offers or agreements permitted. So when it's a dead drawn position and nobody can win, the players usually find a repetition.
Yeah.
In fact, yesterday we had a 5-time repetition, I think.
Yeah, and that's sort of a somewhat new and very extreme anti-draw measure. And yesterday we saw Lenderman and Dominguez struggling a little bit to bring their game to a conclusion, moving back and forth with the last 2 pieces.
Yeah. These things happen, but I would rather see that than see, 10 move draws in the opening. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely. So our schedule for the coming 2.5 weeks is the round time is always at 11 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. for the players who are playing in St. Louis, Missouri, or 2 p.m. for Ben and other people to the east of the country. And you'll see that the rest days are Sunday, October 10th, and then Friday next week. Whichever that day that is, the 15th.
The 15th,
perhaps, yes.
Yeah.
So that's the schedule, and here are the players.
Those are the championship players. You saw them all yesterday, and they were all very fighting. Same players every day. And it's funny, Karen asked me a question yesterday, which is I'm sure a lot of people thought about, which is, what happens if somebody becomes ill and can't play anymore? And I told her that actually happened in the U.S. Championship. I think it was the first one that they held at the Chess Center in St. Louis. Anna Zatonsky had gallstone issues, and she had to drop out of the event. And they got a local player, Doug Eckert, to replace her. He played instead. But that was a Swiss. With the round robin, I'm not so sure what they would do.
It sometimes depends how far into an event they are. Like if they're in round 1, sometimes they'll, fly in, the next best player as a sudden wild card. If they're several rounds into an event, then sometimes they'll just not count that player's score and everybody gets 1 bye.
I know at one of the Sinkfield Cups about 4 or 5 years ago, they had Lequang Lim standing by in case one of the players didn't show up. And he was ready to play in case somebody didn't come. That a 2,700 plus player ready to go. So that was nice. Okay, let's have a look at the women in the U.S. Women's Championship.
Here you go. In approximate rating order from left to right here. Irina, the defending champion and the 8-time champion. Carissa Yip, 2nd place last year. Anna Zatonsky, 4-time champion. Tatev's best result is a 2nd place, and Nazi Pakidze actually has won 2 U.S. championships on the women's side, despite only being here for a couple of years and spending half of that time in retirement.
Yeah, you told me the last event that was FIDE rated that she played in real life was this event, which she won.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's have a look at the standings. This is the U.S. Championship. We had 2 decisive games. John Burke and Ray Robson were able to beat Nardiski and Swiertz, respectively. And the other games were drawn, but not without big fights. Fabiano was in trouble. Dominguez was in trouble. But they found their ways to draws, as the top players often do. And you can see we'll be updating that throughout the round and throughout the tournament. That cross table is going to fill up. And last but not least, let's have a look at the women's standings.
Yeah. And here we've got 4 players who won in the first round and are all tied for first. Irina and Takirjanova, Nemkova, and Shritha Eswaran.
That's right. And the games were all fighting games. It looked like Yip was in trouble early, and she fought back to a draw against Talia. And it looked like Sabine and Nazi both had advantages in their game when finally they had to settle for a draw and the draw ending. But it's going to be an exciting round. It starts in about 4 minutes, and we're going to be back with you after this break with live action. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with round 2 of the U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Championship.
All right, folks, welcome back. We are ready to get into the action today. The games will be starting in a moment. Ben is going to start us off on this game between Dominguez and Caruana, two of the three highest rated players in the tournament. And what should we expect here, Ben?
Well, Dominguez is white. That's the most important thing in this game. I think whoever has white is going to press, but probably not in a crazy way. So I think they're going to try to keep the draw in hand, but try to press, just like we saw yesterday when Jeffrey was pressing against Wesley. And Fabi tried to press against Bruzon, but it turned out it was the other way around. And Dominguez had to defend a much worse position against Lenderman. So usually white is the one pressing. I think Fabi's going to play pretty solid. And probably when Fabi came into the tournament, he thought, you know, if I draw Wesley and Dominguez, that's no big deal, but we got to beat the other players. And I think this will be a pretty solid game. I'm expecting a draw, but okay. I won't be surprised by any result.
Let's play guess the opening. What opening will we have in Dominguez versus Fabi?
I was gonna say Queen's Gambit accepted, but I guess Dominguez plays E4, not D4.
I was wondering whether it would be a Petrov or a Rui Lopez from Fabi, and I was leaning towards he might play the Petrov. Mm-hmm. And I was
now it's going to
be
a Berlin, I assume.
Yeah.
And after knight F6, he played the regular Rui Lopez. All right, so we can't guess the opening at all. That'll show me. So does he play the Archangel? Is that what Fabi does?
We'll guess one next time. I think Fabi, he's played so much E4, E5 that he knows multiple defenses. Obviously, he knows the Berlin, which he's not playing this time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, hard to guess exactly which one he'd be going for right now. As you say, the Archangel has been somewhat popular recently, but
he's playing an open Rui.
Right. Open Rui.
Knight takes E4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're going to see 18 moves of theory played very quickly by both players.
I've seen Fabi play both sides of this opening before. Yeah. He knows it. I imagine this is not so obscure that Dominguez won't be ready for it. So, yeah, I agree with your prediction that they're going to play out more opening theory here than we're going to even recognize.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, Fabi's going to have a lot of time on his clock on move 20 is my prediction.
Yeah.
An easy prediction to make. All right, let's have a look at some other openings. We got Wesley's white against Schwiertz. And Schwiertz was at some point much better or winning yesterday after he was much worse. And then he ended up messing up in time trouble and losing his game to Burke. Let's see what happened. It was Rossalimo, Sicilian, queen takes. And I think Wesley, when he saw the pairings for the tournament before it started, thought this was a game that he probably should win. Darius being one of the lower rated players. Wesley has the white pieces. And Wesley struggled to draw yesterday.
And I would say Dariush is in one of the most unpleasant positions of anybody this round, because he lost yesterday and then has to play black today. I think that's losing and then playing black is one of the worst feelings in all of chess. And then he's also up against a very strong and dangerous opponent. So, on the women's side, there's one other player who's in this, who's really in a tough situation like that. I think the only situation that's even worse, I think, is Tatev, to whom my heart goes out, because she lost, but it was heartbreaking because she should have won, and now she's got black against one of the top opponents.
Right.
So I think Dariush and Tatev, it's like a huge check on their fortitude today, like how well they can come in and play black against really tough opponents today. So we'll see what Dariush has here, but he's going to need more mental toughness than he showed at the Sinkfield Cup when he was playing some of these players like So and Dominguez.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the big differences that we understand that's not easy for the general public to understand is the difference between Swisses and round robins. And most people, probably like 98% of rated chess players, are playing almost all of their tournaments as Swisses. And what's funny is the top 10, 20, 50, 100 players in the world are playing most of their tournaments as round robins. In a round robin, everybody is around the same rating. And in a Swiss, if you lose a heartbreaking game, occasionally you'll get a much easier opponent than yourself. And you can sort of come back. But that doesn't work in a round robin when you could lose a game you were winning, and then you play Fabi, and then you play Wesley, and then you play Lenier, and you're like, ugh. There's no easy games in this tournament. So, you got to put the past behind you and just play your game. And I mean, I've lost a lot of games in Swisses where the next round I played somebody 200, 300, 400 points lower rated because I have less points than I was hoping. So it's really tough for the players here, and hopefully most of them are used to that. They've played in round robins before, especially the top players in this tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, these guys are all from the round robin crowd, so
Ooh,
they'll
Queen
have been there
G4.
before. Okay. He's playing a very intense line. I have tried this once as black myself.
Yeah.
The double attack, winning a pawn. Boy, oh boy, did I get destroyed when I played this as black. I don't think that'll come as a huge surprise to you, Ben, but it was in the last round of a money tournament. Well, I mean, every tournament pretty much is a money tournament, but I mean, I was in first place in a tournament. I had like a chance to, win major money. And it was a very important experience for me because my opponent offered a draw before the round started. I don't know if the rules here with no draw offers during the tournament, during the round, if that covers draw offers before the round, where they can't see the players. But I was offered a draw before the round. I declined. It was pretty much like the biggest money I'd played for up to that point, probably. I declined and went and played my game, got myself absolutely torched in about 18 or 19 moves in this variation here. And then the next time I had to play in a money round, I won because, I'd already been there. I'd already declined the draws. I'd already lost, and there was nothing left to fear. That said, Queen G4 is an outrageously bold move from black, in my opinion.
No, I agree. If I wasn't prepared to the teeth, which I'm assuming that Schwartz is, that's not a move I would play.
Yeah.
But yeah, I assume he has all kinds of prep, and Wesley's trying to remember his prep now and trying to figure out what
now I was doing it on a whim in a Swiss tournament, as you say, right? So one of the things about Swiss tournaments, other big difference, you don't know who you're playing or what variation you're getting, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is a round robin, and there's a chance that at this level, Schwierz has some serious opening prep. And if your opening prep is good at a GM level, then normal human considerations about is this line risky or safe or blah, 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 they all go out the window. Because if you're just playing moves that Stockfish told you, earlier that morning, and you know them by heart, there's truly no risk, even if your king's running through the center and you've got no developed pieces. The only risk would be that your Stockfish was on the Fritz.
Yeah, if you put it on Fritz instead of Stockfish, that would be a big blunder. Good joke there, but most of the audience missed it. But I'll never miss a joke like that. I agree completely. And the luckiest I ever was in chess, in the Chicago Open, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, we went out to eat after the round. It was like round, 6 or 5. And I got back to the tournament at like 1:30 in the morning. And I looked at the cross table, and they had updated it and left it up. And I think it was, we had like 4.5 out of 6, or it was 3.5 out of 5. And I looked at all the 3.5 out of 5, which there were a lot, and I predicted I would get black against Epetian. So I went to my hotel room and I prepared for him from like 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. And he plays this really weird line in the Bayonet King's Indian, which like he made up. And I got to the morning, I was paired with him. And he played that line, and I played a novelty on move like 23 that recommended by the engines. And I ended up beating him. But I mean, it was like a round robin kind of preparation for a Swiss tournament, just on a lucky guess of who I would get paired with. That's not typical Swiss prep. Usually you just try to get to the board.
Now you're going to encourage everyone to like stay out late and then like prep in the middle of the night.
Prepare all night. Yeah.
Go to the tournament asleep.
Well, I've been playing chess for like 46 years, and that's the only story like that I have. It's very rare that you predict who you're going to play, you prepare, you do play them, and it plays the line. That's just so unlikely. But I didn't mind. Yeah, Wesley is taken aback by Queen G4. He's thinking about what to do here.
Right. And you know, maybe instead of taking the pawn on E4, maybe Dariush has in mind to play, if white castles, to play knight takes D4, knight takes D4, queen D1. And that is the opposite of risky or cheeky, right? That is grovelly. But I think it's another option. So
no, that's true. The engine doesn't mind this at all. It slightly prefers white, but it says this is indeed an option. I mean, if you're going to surprise your opponent in the opening with Queen G4, and they start thinking, hopefully he's prepared something sharper and more dangerous, because that puts Wesley under more pressure to prove compensation, than just give Wesley a slight advantage where he's pressing.
Right, but, like you have no preparation advantage if you go into that endgame.
Yeah,
just like, it's like, ooh, Wesley, you don't know what to do next, and Wesley's like, B3, Bishop E3, Rook C1.
Well, Wesley's having a think here, so Darius wins the opening battle for now. Let's have a look at another game. Is this also an open Rui? Is it open Rui today? I didn't realize that was what day it was. I didn't think it was ever open Rui day. Okay, so Shanklin's white against Bruzan. Bruzan gets black every game. Tough tournament.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a funny story. So
they had one person volunteer for it.
Yeah.
All the blacks.
So Bruzan, obviously from Cuba, now plays for the U.S., lives in the U.S. In one of the U.S. championships in San Diego or La Jolla or both, there were 5 people in the tournament who were born in Cuba, and they were playing in the U.S. championship. They all had black one round, and they all won. Didn't see that happening. Yep. Those were the days. So I guess the Cuban players don't mind having the black pieces. So we see another open Rui, as we saw in Fabi's game with Dominguez. Sam is always prepared to the teeth. C3, and they're playing very quickly. Takes, A4. And you can see Sam, who probably didn't know what variation Bruzan would play, looks like he did know, because he has 5 minutes more than he started with, and he's on move 13. Sam is really well prepared.
He's not Fabi, but he is definitely dangerous in the opening.
Yeah, Sam is not easily surprised in the opening, as you can see, and you're going to see that a lot this tournament.
Hang on. So after A takes B5, if black naively takes back with the A pawn, Sam trades on A8, trades on D4, plays queen to G4, and everything black has is hanging.
That's correct. That's why the engine doesn't play A takes B5.
Okay. But on knight F3, queen F3, you also can't
I want to show you the line. I want to show the line that you were saying, which is actually just winning for white. Takes, queen G4, threatening everything. We can't threaten more stuff. That's the max. Yeah, the engine does not like black here.
Right.
So after A takes B5, we can either play knight F3 first, or we could play knight takes B5.
Also prevents the B5 pawn from being saved.
He did take with the knight, and if white takes through the queen, which prevents this capture because of the a8 rook hanging. Then the knight is almost hanging, so black can just castle, threatening the knight and threatening to take back. So actually, the engine prefers just taking with the knight and still prefers white, but not winning for white, just better for white. And Sam's actually thinking.
And then, okay, if black trades queens, they're losing the A and B pawns. So if we play knight f3, we're not actually allowing the queen trade. Black's going to play A takes B5 there.
That's correct. Yep.
And probably going to trade the rook and play like queen B3 or something. And that's probably opening theory or something.
Yeah, it says black can either play C5 or queen A4. Wow. This pawn structure on the king's side reminds me of a Berlin, but not on the queen side.
Queen A4 looks pretty good, actually.
So
not
let's
impressed.
And he knight F3. Oh, this is just my analysis, I think.
In the game, black has taken on F3, and Sam's actually thinking.
Right, I'm refreshing because I'm surprised by Sam thinking. Because knight takes F3 is one of the two engine moves, so I assume that Sam knows that move. But maybe Sam thought knight takes B5 was more likely. Yeah, so he can actually take either way on F3, although not G takes. And still white has a tiny advantage, but the engine prefers knight takes over queen takes. But I think Bruzon is also in prep, so yeah, pretty good preparation from everybody so far in all the games. All right, well, Sam's thinking, so let's have a look at the other Sam. We'll just call everybody Sam.
Yeah.
Savian versus Robson. Let's see what they did. And then he played takes bishop f4. That's one way to play. I always play bishop g5, but that's me.
I don't always play the queen's gambit, but when I have, I've also played bishop g5.
Yeah. And it looks like Sam thought a long time in the opening, and now Ray is thinking for the first time. Because Sam has already used 10 minutes to get to move 6.
Right. That's quite a bit, given that the only move they could have really, I mean, the only thing to think about is how you want to answer bishop b4. So it means pretty much that he didn't expect the Rogozin, I would say.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the aggressive knight e4. That sounds like Robson. Always play aggressive. And I was saying earlier that Bruzon is getting black every game. Well, Sam Savian gets white every game. So,
yeah.
And somehow nobody's won yet. Ray Robson, one of the leaders of the event. He won yesterday against Donya Nardiski. Rook c1. I probably had this position with white. Probably. A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, these kinds of positions, sometimes black plays hyper aggressively with c5 and g5 and plays like a total maniac.
That's what pretty much goes along with knight e4.
Right. Yeah, after c5, you can play queen a5. After g5, you just keep attacking while white's king is on e1 and can't really escape e1 for a while. I can escape if I want, but it takes white, 3-4 moves to get his king to g1. And if you can make threats every move, maybe you can stop him from doing that. And I think in the long run, if black just plays solid and doesn't make a threat every move, white's going to have a better structure and better position. But since black played the moves knight e4, bishop b4, I don't think that's what he has in mind. I think he wants to play aggressive. And he played knight c6.
Okay. That, I mean, do you know the point of that? Because I would need to really think.
Well, he's after g5, he's making bishop e5 less palatable. and he's putting some pressure on d4 after like g5, g4, and he's developing a piece. But yeah, that's not the most common move, to be sure. I've seen those kind of ideas, but not exactly this move order. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by this move.
Yeah, because to my mind, if black makes any trade on c3, it's not really desirable because they'll spend more time and effort making that trade. So I feel like once you play moves like bishop b4 and knight e4 piling up on c3, the only thing that really feels consistent to me is c5, queen a5, or maybe in some case bishop f5 with the idea of knight c3 and bishop a3 trapping the rook. But with just knight c6, I feel like white can just play e3 bishop.
Yeah, I was thinking of e3
and
which I'm going to play now, which was not a move that the engine liked. I guess because the bishop is trapped on this side now, and we're just going to keep pushing our pawns on the king's side. So if here we're going to play h5, we don't really want to move our h pawn and allow this pawn structure, but I mean we sort of have to do it now.
Got it.
I think that has to be.
So
my question is, what if black had played this immediately? Is white going to play bishop to d2? The answer is yes. Yeah, the engine likes bishop d2 and says that's silly.
Yeah.
So I guess we're waiting for e3, and then we're going to start playing like the maniac that we are. And by we, I mean Ray Robson, obviously.
Right. So he's a maniac in waiting here. Knight c6.
That's right.
Is in order to play g5.
If they play e3, if they don't play e3, white's got to make some move that doesn't make the most sense ever. Like h3 first. Or even knight d2 is one of the computer suggestions, which I wouldn't play unless I had this prepared. Unless I analyzed this position at home specifically, I'm not going to play knight d2.
Yeah.
It looks like Ray knows the opening better than Sam, just based on the time usage.
Yeah, definitely.
Ray's one of the few players who's like 2650 plus, who I think always wants to win. And I think a lot of people, if they have black against a player their own rating or higher, don't really mind drawing. But I think Ray does. I think Ray wants to play. And he's going to try to win games with white and black, no matter who he's playing.
There are probably a few other players who are ferocious like that, but I agree that it's not that Ray probably stands out in that way. It's not quite normal how much of a fight he wants to start. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a look at Jeffrey versus Donya. Nardiski losing his first game. Jeffrey had tremendous pressure on Wesley, and Wesley defended well and drew. And let's see. It's a Kali Zucker tort, I guess. And actually, I've played this with white. In fact, I played this with white in the U.S. Championship about 10 years ago against Gregory Kaidanov. And then I sacked all my pieces and ended up drawing by perpetual or something. Yeah, so it looks like Donya doesn't want Jeffrey to play 20, 25 moves of theory. Just put him on his own early. And Jeffrey's, is thinking. And again, Donya being one of the lower rated players in this event, getting in with a wild card, the 2,700 players figure that's somebody they can beat. So even with the black pieces, I'm sure Jeffrey's playing for a win, and Donya's always playing for a win. So hopefully this will be an exciting kind of attacking game and not where they trade all the pieces off in the center, which is another way it can go.
Right. I mean, I imagine both players want it to heat up later, but whether it does or doesn't is partly sort of, chance and which way the position goes. They'll they'll follow, what the position requires of them. Yeah, I think that Jeffrey needs to be very alert and aware of danger in all the games that he's playing black against the players below him. I think he needs to appreciate that these people are gunning for him. A couple years ago, he was young. He wasn't the favorite. He was one of the 2600 crew, and he was on his way up, and he felt like he was just gunning for everybody. But he needs to understand he's like an established big gun now, and other people have got dartboards at home with his face on it. So I think this is a very dangerous round. I mean, he played great yesterday, but I think all the rounds where he's got black against somebody like Savian or Robson or Burke or Nardiski, all of these games are really dangerous for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tough field. Jeffrey played the somewhat anti-positional, I would say, trading on d4, which I didn't suspect. And I'm wondering if he thought that in this position, one of Donya's ideas is to take here and play e4 relatively early. So he stopped that.
Right.
And, if I have black in this position, one idea is to try to trade the white square bishops, but the other is to play bishop b7 and try to put my knight on e4 somehow, so I have some say in the center also. But I must say, if I had white in this opening, which I have had, I would be happy with this position.
Yeah, taking on d4 is a little bit unusual, so we have to wonder why he didn't just play bishop a6 or bishop b7, and we'll be able to guess better after we see which one he chooses on the next move. Mm-hmm. But I was definitely expecting one of those two bishop moves. And then it's tricky to wonder what he didn't like. If black had played bishop a6, I was considering maybe c4 for white.
An explosive
in this position
move
here.
Yep.
I think that would be a logical choice for white, but of course white could also have, castled or played queen e2 or something.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a lot of possibilities here that look sort of similar. Like you said, bishop a6 looks reasonable, bishop to b7. So yeah, taking on d4 wasn't really on my radar as a move that I thought he might play.
If he wanted to play bishop b7, I don't really see any d takes c5 danger yet, but it may not just be about avoiding d takes c5. It might also be that in certain situations, he wants to know if white's recaptured on d4 with a pawn or a knight or something like that. Because
put him to the test right away.
Yeah. He might just want to know if white's got that pawn structure or not before he makes some other choices.
Did play bishop a6.
I'm still going to expect c4 here. I mean, that's just first impressions.
Yep, and now Donya's going to think, because now he has an important decision. Queen e2, bishop takes a6, c4. And, the difference between c4 and bishop takes a6, it's a different kind of position. So Donya's going to have to figure out which one he likes more. But I agree with you, c4 seems like the natural move here. And last but not least, we have John Burke versus Lender.
Leader.
And let's go back. It looks like it was a Sveshnikov Sicilian with knight d5, I assume. Yeah.
Yep.
And you can play knight b8 or knight e7, and Magnus has played both.
Yeah.
a4, that's one of the moves. Yeah, Burke is pretty good with white and Sicilian, as I've seen from tournaments I've been in with him. Seems to know what he's doing with white and the Sicilian pretty well. He wants the knight to go to c4 later. Yeah, here I guess after bishop d2, he wants to cement the queen side with a5. So Lenderman beat him to it, giving away the b5 square.
Right.
King h1 usually means you want to play f4. Knight b6. That's a very strange square for the knight in this opening. Knight b6. Giving up the control here, and yeah, I guess he was more interested in stopping knight c4 than, you know, putting his knight on a great square and playing knight c5 himself. And it is funny, what the engine says after c4, black can play knight d7, now that white can't play knight c4 anymore. It's getting too technical for me. But yeah, I think
so that would say, if Lenderman has something like that in mind, that he really didn't want to let white play knight c4.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to lose a lot of time to plug that square with a pawn.
Well, knight
Even
c4
though the knight on a3 also has a plausible square on b5, but knight c4 is just something he doesn't want to deal with.
Yeah, the knight's great on c4. I agree. But yeah, I'm not a fan of the knight here. I'm like, I must admit, he is attacking a couple pawns.
Right.
So it seems like, you know, maybe even c4 is forced if white wants to get an advantage. So this is a very, I would say, unusual kind of move, and I mean, really interesting. And now Burke is going to have a big think. But yeah, really interesting play from Lenderman, which, I mean, Burke Lenderman, doesn't matter who's white, they're going to play a really tactical, interesting, strategical game and not just trade everything and get a boring position and squeeze. These guys like the action. Lenderman likes to play quickly. And these guys are both very confident. Burke is tied for first, winning his game with black yesterday. And, you know, he's looking to beat some of the higher rated players.
Honestly, I couldn't imagine anything more exciting as far as a way for this U.S. championship to open than with Burke going on like a winning streak. The lowest rated player by, I mean, more than 50 points.
Yeah.
And to some of these guys, he's giving up 200 points. I can't think of anything that would be more exciting to me personally than to see Burke just come out smashing.
Yeah, and when I play in open tournaments that Burke is at, Burke just always does well. And against GMs who aren't necessarily at this level, but pretty close. Yeah. All right, we've looked at the openings in the U.S. Championship. We're going to go on our first break. And after we do, we're going to have a look and see some of the women's games. We'll be back after these few short messages.
Welcome back, everybody, to coverage of the second round of the U.S. Women's Championships and U.S. Men's Championship and U.S. Championships. I'm here with Ben, and we are turning our attention now to the games from the U.S. Women's Championships, starting with Ben's favorite to pick up her first U.S. Championship. Slight pre-tournament favorite for you, Ben.
Yes.
Carissa Yip.
Yeah. Yep, Carissa. And she's playing super aggressively, as she always does, and she has a nice time advantage. Tatev playing the French, as she's known to do. We have an advanced French. Bishop d3 takes, and then castles. Wow.
Right.
I'm actually not familiar with castles, but that's going to go in my blitz and bullet repertoire now.
Straight into the bullet repertoire.
Yeah, you got to have that.
Yeah,
I have some, unusual lines in my quick repertoire, but I haven't played that. I'm going to start playing it. Okay, so she's sacrificing right away. I'm guessing Tatev isn't super familiar with it, since she's thinking forever on every move. And she played bishop d7, which is fine. And then, c takes would just transpose back into normal theory. But rook e1, she's intent on leaving that pawn on d4. Knight e7.
If we want to interpret the meaning of this opening, Ben,
Yeah.
Normally when white plays cd4, they gambit the pawn, sooner or later.
Right.
Black plays knight takes d4. Black wins a pawn, and we get a trade of the f3 knight for the c6 knight.
Mm-hmm.
What white seems to be doing by leaving the pawn on c3 is they're looking for black to at some point take on c3, then white recaptures with the knight on b1, and you get sort of a similar, I know it as the Milner-Berry, but you get a similar sort of French pawn structure down that d pawn, but without that knight trade of f3 for c6 knight. And if black wants to trade those pieces, they have to go on an adventure, spending their energy on knight c6 to d4, when white's already developed the knight on c3. And maybe then even knight f3 check, developing white's queen to f3, and it all ends up costing black a lot of energy. So that's why we're seeing a several move standoff over this d4 pawn.
Yeah, keeping pieces on the board since white's sacrificing a pawn for initiative. I agree. And then Tatev isn't taking it, and Carissa's moving very quickly. I guess this is her prep. And Tatev is like, I'm not taking that pawn. And she plays a6, which is, a move that we see in the advanced French a lot. Sometimes black wants to trade bishops or just stop white from putting a piece here. And also, it's funny, it's a waiting game where Tatev is saying, if you move your bishop, I'm going to take this. And if you move your knight, you can't take back with your knight. So if you're not going to move any of these pieces by me not taking here, I'll just make some reasonable developing moves.
Right. And from Carissa's side, she's saying if the knight on e7 went to like f5 or g6, she could trade it on f5 or kick it on g6 with h5, but trade it on f5 and then regain her pawn on d4 and not have a pawn sack. So they're in a situation that's kind of a competition for who has the least nothing left to do. And
Chris has been put to the test because after h5, Tatev played h6 and said
h6, right?
It's hard to find a move that helps white that's not part of this pawn on d4 now.
Yeah. Tatev still has rook c8 in her back pocket. If we think of this as like a king and pawn endgame and like those reserve tempi where like you've got a pawn that's still on a2 and you can go to a3 to get, the opposition and penetrate with your king. Tatev's got rook c8 in her pocket, just waiting. And what does Carissa have here?
If she's not going to move any of these pieces, these seem like they're on the right squares. That's on the right square.
Right.
I guess queen e2 is possible. I don't know why.
There could be queen e2. There could be a3, kind of like black's a6. Maybe b4, rook to a2. We saw that rook a7 move from Dominguez yesterday when he couldn't move any of his pieces.
Yeah, I mean, dc3 just releases white's pieces. So I think that, at some point, if Carissa does take on d4, they're just going to go back into that line, except, I don't know, this seems like it's not good for getting quick development. I think Tatev found a really nice antidote to this line.
Yeah, she's handled it pretty well by holding onto that tension while in unfamiliar territory. As we mentioned, she's got the toughest task of the round in the women's section, playing black against someone as good as Carissa after sustaining yesterday's heartbreak. And one other thing about this matchup is I would say these two players are clearly the strongest players in U.S. women's chess who have not won the U.S. women's championship at some point. And they've each finished second.
Yeah.
And I know that winning the tournament even once would mean everything to Tatev. I know she guns for this tournament every time. And then Carissa being younger, it's like, a breakout if she can do it, right? She's looking to go up and up.
No, for sure. And I like the way you put that. The two strongest who haven't won the tournament before. That's right. Yeah. I really like the way Tatev has managed to find a good way against this pawn sacrifice. So yeah. Let's see. All right. All right, let's have a look at another game. We got our many-time champion, Irina Krush, and she has the black pieces. She won yesterday with the black pieces, and she's playing Anna Sharevich. And it looks like it's another kind of London.
Yeah.
See a lot of Londons now.
Honestly, an absolutely perfect way for Irina to start her title defense here. Mm-hmm. Black in the first two rounds against two of the lowest rated players in the event. Get those, those tie breaks for playing a lot of blacks, get some of the blacks out of the way. We were joking that someone was playing black the whole tournament, but the truth is usually the player with double black at the beginning will get a double white later in the tournament.
Hopefully.
And here a very unambitious opening from white. That's fine for her. Nothing to really worry about. She can just let her class slowly manifest itself as she can comfortably try and, win an equal-ish middle game on positional skills or on endgame skills.
That's right. And here Irina's afraid of knight e5 with all kinds of pressure. So she plays knight to d7 to protect e5 some more. Knight e5 anyway. And they trade on e5. And Irina forces a reckoning by playing a6 and says, okay, what are you going to do? You're going to take my knight. You're going to retreat your bishop. You're going to do something else. And what's funny here is black is not threatening to take with the pawn because the rook would be attacked. Black is threatening to take with the queen. So this gives white an extra, very strange option of playing c4.
That would be a testing move. That would be a testing move. I mean, rook c8 looks like a pretty logical answer to it, right? Mm-hmm. Actually threatening the bishop, developing the rook to a file that's sure to open, avoiding doubled pawns. I don't think c4 is going to really throw Irina for too big of a loop,
and she just took on c6. And if you retreat the bishop, you got to watch b2. So
she didn't have great retreats, right? Bishop e2, you still get your good bishop traded, and your king to e2 is just randomly not that good in the opening. And on bishop d3, queen b2, queen c3, rook b7, queen c1.
And there's a trap here that I've seen often in the Cambridge Springs. bc is actually a blunder, because we attack the queen and we attack the bishop.
Yeah.
Queen takes b2 doesn't work because you still got everything attacked. Now you have more stuff attacked.
It's just getting worse.
So she has to take with the queen. Otherwise, we're going to see a very early end to the game.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll see the shortest game. But I think...
and she did.
Yeah. I think this is going in a perfect direction for Irina so far this game.
Mm-hmm.
The queen trade makes it easier for black to play. Which move, Ben?
f6.
F6. They're going to play it. It lets them develop the bishop on f8. It's sort of semi-needed in this position, and
are you insinuating
no
that
queens
White's
on the
going to play
board.
f3 also?
It's possible that White plays f3 also, yeah. Because White needs to, block out the light squares a little bit. Black is willing to play f6 and weaken the light squares, because if you've got the only light squared bishop, it's not going to become a problem. So we may see f3 and f6 both in this game.
That's possible. So this ending's, I would say, pretty equalish. Black has some pawn structure issues, but Black does have a half-open b file and the two bishops. D takes c5 was played, which, to me, that's a big decision, and she played it very quickly.
Oh, because it's asking a big question if Black can recapture or not because of g7. And if you don't recapture, are you ever going to get your pawn back?
Well, I guess
F6.
always play f6. That's my new mantra.
f6, bishop d6, trade and bring the king to recover
Right,
the pawn.
trade and then go win that pawn. Yeah.
There goes the bishop pair. Honestly, I was quite worried for White that she would become worse really soon. So this may have been a good decision.
Indeed. Okay, let's have a look at Ashritha. She won the first round, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
and
with
she's
White.
playing Paikidze, who drew. And this looks like...
So here's the beneficiary of the double White to start the tournament off. Ashritha, she's got a great position here.
Yeah.
And when you see some of these anti-Caro-Khans that people are exploring, like knight f3, d3, knight f3, knight c3, you wonder why anyone ever played the main lines of the Caro-Khan. Because Tatev got such a good position yesterday.
Yeah, with knight f3 and d3.
Like no trouble. And I think Ashritha here got like an amazing position with absolutely no effort. Look at this. She plays knight f3, knight c3, and Black just coughs up the bishop pair for nothing. White's not behind on development, central control, pawn structure, nothing.
Yeah.
It's just free.
This is the main line. What are you going to do? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't play Caro-Kann if this is what White plays against it, honestly.
Okay, so they got this position, which you don't like at all for Black. These are the kind of positions I have for Black. Very solid and passive. Hope that my opponent overextends with their great position.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, White just has a nice edge, more space, two bishops. And Black is very solid. And I get these kind of positions with Black in more than one opening. Selector Slav and in the Fort Knox French defense. I have these kinds of positions all the time, and I grovel for a draw. So there you go.
Fair enough.
Usually, the players in these events don't want to grovel for a draw. So
yeah. But I mean, what do you think? Like, I think this position for White looks more pleasant than what I normally see in sort of like classical Caro, D takes e4 mainstream opening theory.
Right.
This seems like much easier for White to get happy about and to torture a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the non-main lines for White in the Caro-Kann are still giving Black issues. Not just playing 20 moves of theory and being a tiny bit better, but even those lines seem to be good for White also. It's tough to have Black. Yeah.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing some of those, there's just like a couple premium openings that seem to, neutralize pretty well. A lot of them are much maligned by players. Like the Petrov, I think, does pretty well for Black, but, almost no amateur wants to go anywhere near it.
Queen e3. That's not the first move I would play. I guess she's making sure that, like f5, e5 doesn't gain tempi.
Right. My thought would have been to move the bishop off of f4.
Yeah.
Because my main goal is to avoid like e5 at the wrong moment.
Right, and trading everything, you want to try to play d5 if possible. Yeah. All right, so we both like White a little bit. You probably like White more than I do because I'm used to having Black in these positions.
Right.
Not the greatest thing ever, but what are you going to do? Very solid, but not very energetic for black.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue.
So we pop down to Zatonsky. Black has just played c5.
Right.
And we've got the Lanier Dominguez question from yesterday. Can white just push past, or?
Right. Let's see how this happened. It was a Queen's Gambit accepted, something that Talia has started playing recently. Queen a4 check, a little bit unusual. Black can play, I think, anything here, but she chose knight bd7.
Right. I think these queen a4 moves, which crop up in a few random openings as sort of a sideline, I think that just chess-wise, there's no way they're good. I mean, not that they're bad or anything, but like, you know, you're white, you can get away with it or whatever. You get your pawn back, who cares? But I don't think that they pose like a serious challenge to any openings, like refutation-wise. And basically, I think they're useful against somebody who relies on opening preparation. Somebody who's less comfortable coming up with their opening moves on their own.
Right. No, that's true. I think it's usually, as you said, used as a surprise weapon. E6, E4. Bishop E7 seems really passive. It seems like we could start with C5, or we could play something like A6 and try to play B5 later. Bishop E7 just seems like I want a castle and get out of this pin. Bishop C4, and she did.
Which I guess does introduce knight B6 as a move, so it's not.
Yeah, now white started to beat a retreat to avoid knight B6. The queen on A4 did the job it was supposed to do. Now back to better. And C5, as you said, is white going to play D5 or allow some trades here in the center? Right.
Whether white trades or leaves the tension, this knight B6 is kind of a big resource for black. So much so I could even see white trading on C5. But let's just put D5 knight B6 on the board for a second and just ask ourselves if white is prepared to fight over the D5 square.
Yeah, D5 is not the preferred move. Either takes a knight B6 or knight B6 right away. Just seems good for black because white's king is on E1 and black already has threats.
Right. So tempo on the bishop. If the bishop,
yeah, I think
totally
D5
retreats,
just isn't good.
D5 is hanging, and it just looks bad, right?
What's this?
But on the other hand, what's that?
After knight B6, what do you think white should do?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really see anything good for white.
No, I think this is just bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So D5 probably is impossible.
Right.
And as you said, knight B6, you know, is attacking a lot of things here.
Similarly, if I castle, there seems to be a problem with CD4, knight D4, knight B6.
Yeah, so probably I have to take, as you said, or play E5 for confusion.
Okay.
I mean, E5 is very interesting because white's attacking with his king still on E1, but maybe she has the right to do that.
Right. Depends where this knight can go.
Yeah, we can't take on D4 because there's too many pieces hanging.
Right. So ideally here, as black, you just plop the knight on D5.
Yeah, I think if you play knight E8, that E5 must be the right move then.
Right.
Yeah, now I could actually castle because you're not attacking D4 as much with your knights blocking your queen. Just to get my king safe. Yeah, white has a lot of ways to play here. White can take on D5, even with the bishop, and just play like really solid.
Right.
This is also interesting. Castles is interesting. Probably what I would do.
Leaving open some options. Yeah, because there's this cool position you can play as white where if black plays C takes D4, you now play knight takes D5, E takes D5, bishop D3, and you just leave the double D pawns for a moment. And you know, you have the option to switch to a knight on D4 at some point if you want to. But first, you play moves like rook e1 and bishop f4.
Yeah, this just seems like white's slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
I would take white here.
Yeah. Okay, so e5 looks probably like a pretty good move for white. Not instinctive to me. I had to work my way around to finding that move, because first I would check something like d5 and castles. I'd be unhappy with both of those because of knight b6.
Yeah.
And then I really have to come up with something different here.
Yeah, I think you just have to take on c5 or play e5 and decide which one you like better.
Yeah. Taking on c5 is probably more Zatonski's style.
No, actually, I agree. Yeah, I think she might
Like,
take
she
on
likes
c5.
symmetrical positions. She doesn't look for really murky stuff where she's gonna have to justify being down a pawn or a structure that's dangling.
At the risk of being crazy, but that's not very risky because I'm already crazy. I think this is, for Anna, the most important game in the tournament, because yesterday she was doing fine and she just sort of instantly lost. And now she has white against one of the lower rated players. If she loses this game, the tournament's like over for her. She has to win this game to bounce back, because this is a good pairing for her after that first round debacle where it seemed like she was fine and then just everything fell apart. I don't think she wants to start the tournament with two bad results, but if she wins this game, I think that'll put her back into the mode she thinks she can still win the tournament.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she needs to not be too desperate about it. But you're right that if this starts 0-2 for her, it's just going to be a really long tournament where she would rather resign from the tournament. Another thing you can't do in a round robin that you can do in a Swiss. All
right, let's have a look at Sabina's game with Nemkova. Very solid game. Sabina has a huge time advantage. Former U.S. women's champion. This could have happened through more than one move order.
Yeah.
Okay. They got this. I think this is actually the normal move order. You would see that.
Yeah, b3 semi-Slav. This is the most popular way to get here. Rook d1.
Yeah, that's a little unusual.
Is not the most popular move there, but
yeah.
Okay.
So we have no trades yet, and it's almost symmetrical position, pretty close.
Yeah. My guess is that black's quite safe here, and that they've got time to play the pretty simple plan of rook c8 and c5.
Mm-hmm.
And even though black spends two moves on the c pawn in these variations, the position's extremely safe and solid once they do.
Yeah, there's c5, there's taken c5, there's taken e5, there's e5. There's just moving a rook in the center, and that's why Nemkova's thinking so long. They all seem pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think definitely rook c8 and c5 is the right approach. I've played this opening a lot. Mm-hmm. With the white queen on c2 here against this b3 bishop b2 line, I think you just want to play rook c8 c5. And then the question is just about timing. Like, sometimes you need to play c5 first to avoid e4. And sometimes you need to play rook c8 first to avoid knight b5.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all black has to think. They have to think, if rook c8 is e4 problem. If rook c8 e4 is a problem for black, then they need to play c5 right away.
So what do you think? Has black equalized already, or you think white still has a little advantage?
My guess is that black is equalized.
And she played rook fd8.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to decide what to do when all the moves seem pretty similar. Yeah. All right, let's look at our last game we haven't looked at before we go to our next break. It's Begum is white against Megan Lee, and pretty solid position. Looks like some kind of Italian.
Yeah.
Yep.
The top
the
players have
slower
been discussing
variations.
positions like this recently. So if anyone's looking for some positional primers, there's a lot of good recent games that have been played here. You can see different examples of, bishops being traded on e3 or e6, and what happens when you take with the f pawn to open the file, what happens when you take with the rook and then just retreat it and eventually play d5.
Knight f1, and black plays a quick d5. Queen c2. And black is playing pretty slowly, but it looks like she's playing just fine. And a slow maneuvering game. And I'm guessing when they get into the late 20s, early 30s, move number-wise, it's going to be really exciting. But until that, they're going to start maneuvering and trying to gain space and trying to improve their position. And I found a lot in these top tournaments. A lot of times, crazy openings peter out to some draw, and sort of slow, solid openings get really exciting later in the game.
Yes.
Start slow and then quickly.
I think sometimes it takes many years in chess to get the idea that if you like a certain kind of position, that you may not get it by playing the opening that looks like it. Like if you like crazy positions, you might not get it by playing a crazy opening line. You might get it by playing the exchange Slav or something. So, so these really slow Gioco pianos can have a lot of rich content as long as you have the patience to wait for it.
All right, so we had a look at the games. They're going to heat up, obviously. We're going to go on our next quick break, and we'll be back with you live. Coverage of the 2021 U.S. Championship and U.S. Women's Championship back after these quick messages.